Shrek, yo, what's your favorite cuisine? I eat frogs and bugs and dung beetle pie. Sometimes I eat masnut and I don't know why.
Are you tired, lonely, depressed, anxious? Introducing Moon Shoes! You will no longer feel any of those things when you bounce up and down, all around, and even into space. Look at our happy customer.
I love my moon shoes. I can go to the moon and back, and I got a rocket ship.
Wow, how amazing! The Moon Shoes will do absolutely none of those things. They will not help you at all. You also will not fly to the moon. Welcome back, guys. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome back. Welcome. If you are new, I'm Christina. This is my brother Spencer. We made this podcast to show that communication is key in all aspects of life. If there's anything that we talk about that you would like to hear us yap about more, or if there's anything that we don't talk about that you would like to hear our opinions on, you can always let us know on our social media, or if you're watching this on YouTube, you can let us know in the comments below. We're also on Spotify, so if you're driving to work or on your daily run, you can listen to us without having to actually see us.
Yeah, and now that I'm thinking about it, we could probably get it on Google and Apple Podcasts now that we have more people watching. We have a lot more views. There's a lot more to upload into that. We're going to be taking a look at that. The shirts are going to get started to make next week. That's not saying that they're going to be like soon, but the project has been started. So yeah, go ahead and follow, like, share, subscribe, do what y'all do. Thank y'all for watching, and let's get into it.
Let's get it.
Yeah. So, I guess there was a lot of things I wanted to talk about today, but I don't recall any of them because I was just sleeping.
Somebody took a cat nap today.
Yeah. So I'm like refreshing all of that. I've been getting up real early with the gym, and my body needs me to it needs me to rest. So yeah, I had to take a nap before starting this evening. So I did forget all of those things because it was like books that I'm reading and things that I've been listening to. Like there's a very good audiobook that I'm listening to right now, but I want to have like a breakdown of it, probably bring some notes next time that I jotted down because it's very applicable. It almost helps you shape your life in terms of like how to deal with those past things and your struggles and why you can actually use those to your advantage instead of to your disadvantage like most people use it. So that one I'll get into next time because it's a lot of good information.
It reminds me of the book that I read. I think you have it too. You Were a Badass?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that one was a good book. That one actually got me to quit the job that I hated.
Really?
Yeah, I was working at a call center at the time, and I was like, oh, I hate this job so much, but I was like, I need to make money, so I have to be here. And I started reading that book, and like in the book, she talks about like, you know, going after the things that you want, like not doing things just because. And I was like, you know what? That's right. I don't need to be in this job if I don't want to. So I started making, you know, doing interviews, like sending in applications to other places, and then I left.
Damn.
At first I put in like a 2 weeks, but then I was like, I can't stay here for another 2 weeks. Like that's how much I really did not like the job at all. I was like, yeah, I'm quitting. Bye.
It's the going back part, I think, is a really hard thing to do. I think I had dropped that thing of the 2 weeks a long time ago because I'm like, if I don't like it here, I don't think I will like to come back to it. Like it's very rarely where I think a lot of people would do that unless they feel, oh, well, I have to make it financially. I think that, you know, your happiness and you sacrificing that to go to another job wouldn't be useful because then it will just like kind of back extend to your family. Like, yes, you need money and you need a job to support the family. Like, let's say you had a family of 4 kids. I completely understand why you would take that route of staying and, you know, putting in the 2 weeks and keeping that security with it. But opportunities always arise whenever you're put into a position like that too. Now, at first it may seem like a large leap, but I still think somebody would be able to transfer and go over to that and figure it out at the end of the day. Even though you may have no idea how it will go, I still think that there's opportunity there and they'll keep arising.
I mean, I think the reason that people put into 2 weeks isn't more so like, oh, just in case, I go back. It's more to help when you go into another job, because they're going to ask, well, why did you leave your other job? And if obviously like they called a reference, be like, oh, hey, like, how was this person? And, they tell them, well, they just up and quit. Well, then their fear in hiring you is you're going to do the same thing to them. So I think that's why the 2 weeks thing is in place, is to just kind of help almost, I guess, your reputation going into another job, so the other job will hire you, instead of being like, oh, well, if you're just quitting jobs, we don't know if you're going to quit ours, and then they don't hire you.
That's valid. I think it depends on the person. Like the person that like actually has, the full picture of who you are, instead of just like that. Like HR would probably look at you like, yeah, like this person up and quit and they only worked here like 7 months, let's say. Like within those 7 months, you could have done a lot of things, but them making that statement may say otherwise. So I think it depends on the person that you have for the referral, because I could go back to people where I had quit as well too, and they would still be my referrals to this day just for those purposes. Now, would I need that in my current state? No, because I wouldn't look at referrals as the future. I want to create my own futures and create my own opportunities through taking those risks of not having to go into corporate again and fall under that line. There's so much you can do outside of that. Like you can go work these other jobs just by, talking with close friends, or again, seeing those opportunities as they arise. Now that would be like more under your 1099s probably with people, but I don't know. I know it's different between each individual. It's just the route that I see for myself would not incorporate where I would need references, even though, again, I would have those references. I would have references to people I'm not even associated with. They just know and see what I do, and they would just end up being my reference, even outside of if I work for them or not.
I think it's also not the reference thing. I know when at one of my jobs that I worked at, my boss, he was showing me like the hiring process that they do, and it'll like tell you right off the bat if that person is a good candidate. So before you even click on their profile, it'll tell you, and it's based off of things like, did they quit? Like, how long were they at their last job? Have people said good things? So even before you ever click on their application to see like their work, it'll automatically tell them. I don't know if every place does this, but I know that at Walgreens, it did that. So I'm assuming HR, when you send in your application, like does all that behind the scenes, and will just send it to the hiring manager so they can see.
I could see that. It really depends on who's going to be in touch with it. But I think it's also how you make the impression more than anything in the interview. I think that matters more than those candidates. Like, yes, not to say that those don't factor in. Like, if you're working a month, like, at a time at each job, I can see you not being higher up on the list. But I think it depends on your quality and traits and what's actually going to keep you, like, being there. Like, the interview itself becomes important. I think that's why a lot of people stress about it, is they don't know what the reaction is going to be. They don't know what to say. They don't know what questions they're going to do. And they have all of that going through their head instead of just being themselves and being authentic to those questions, whether they get hired or not. Like, I think it's more about, like, how much effort you do put into it, of just being there and what you can provide to actually help. Like, focus on what they are saying, but don't get lost in the fact that they're telling you questions that may not even pertain to your job. Like, there was one hiring that I had where they actually made me take that 16 personalities test because they wanted to see how I'd fit in with the job people. Now, they didn't end up taking me in, and it might have been because they didn't see experience. It was for a car repair shop, basically. And
made you take a personality test?
Yes, to see if I would fit in with the crew. Now, I came out, I believe, as like the advocate, like the leader, and I think they did not want me there because, I mean, there were a lot of people who seemed like they had the leadership roles. Like, it seemed like two people like kind of ran it. Everything looked fairly well, but I was going to start off as like somebody who changed oil, and I wasn't going to accept that because I know what my value is. And I know that I can do so much more outside of that. And during that time, I think that's what kind of woke me up to that too. It's like, well, yes, I can step down to that position and fulfill it, but is that something that's going to actually be worthwhile for me in the long run? Is that going to bring me that contentness? Is it going to drive me forward? And I just couldn't see that. And I kept doing that as well too, because I would always question, I'm like, okay, will my job continue to pay how it pays? Will I have a routine? Will this be able to work? I've had many times where I question that and I try to do something else because I want to learn, but I know that I can intermingle a bunch of different things and still be able to get that experience that I need. Because I just learned by, paying attention, sometimes reading, but like hands-on. That's just my approach of learning. You put me in front of it, you give me an experience with it, me experiencing stress through it, I will definitely remember it. Because I'll be like, okay, why doesn't this work? And once I solve the problem, it's like, okay, remember how that's solved, try to apply that in the future. Because that's exactly what I do with cars, because each manufacturer is different. So I'm like, okay, if I'm working on an Audi, I have star bits that can have problems where I'm stripping bolts and stuff. Whereas if I'm working on like a Honda, it's very easy to access the engine bay. Like learning those things is because I've went through those different things, whether it's my stuff that breaks down or it's people around me, just offering the help to them and getting to that place where I know what I'm doing in that sense. And again, I'm not perfect. Everybody makes mistakes in their job. Like even the boss has, like getting on the way to the top. So I think it's more about like getting as much experience as you can and being able to apply it outside of the job, because that will show how much you love it. Like I still love what I do because I'll just go out and do it whenever like I want. Even though the priorities have shifted a little bit with it, I still love doing it regardless. And I want to have that every day because I like seeing the sunrises. I like seeing the sunsets. I like being outside. And it doesn't have to be all the time, but it brings me a different sense of like looking at life. It's just always endless with opportunities. So, yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
And I hope that it's like that for everybody, because you can have somebody who works at a grocery store and love what they're doing, but then you have people who work at a grocery store and don't love what they're doing. Same thing in the automotive sphere, same with the call center sphere. Like each person has to feel like that is their place and that is their calling at the time. If not, then that means they're stressing or worrying about or fearing these other things that they can take care of and not actually acting upon them.
I think it's hard for people to sometimes get into a job that they love. Sometimes it requires more than they can do at the time. Especially like now, our economic situation is not the best. And so I think a lot of people are definitely going towards jobs that are actually going to help pay their bills, because if not, they'll be living on the streets and wondering when their next meal is going to be. So I think that's partly why people go into jobs they don't love, because it's going to pay them. And at the moment, that's what they need, even if it doesn't make them happy. But the hope is that while they're working that job, they're also working to go into a job that's going to make them happy.
Yeah, in content as well too, because it's not every day. Like the love and hate relationship with the job is very true for even people who love what they do. Like I have that. I'll be like, why does it operate like this? But then other days I'll be like driving and I'm like, it's beautiful. Like I'll still have that balance between that, but there's still meaning. I still feel like there's meaning behind like what I do. And I think they can experience that too. That scarcity mindset is kind of what you were talking about. It's like, oh, I need security. Oh, what about this? How do I handle this, this, and this? But that's not looking at it as an abundance mindset. That's looking like, oh, I need to get this stuff done because this is the only way that there is to make money. But that's not the only way. Like businesses, like big businesses would, like how many that I know that were literally based off of COVID, like the 2 water shops that I go to, both started during COVID, and both of them are still good today, even though all of their, trials and tribulations that they had to go through, every single step, they're still there. Same with like all the crashes back in the day too. Whenever oil companies got big, banking companies got big, they were during very hard times, like the Great Depression. There are companies that are still to this day that have made it through that, even though they started during those times. So the opportunity is there regardless. But yes, if you have family that you have to support, I understand why going to that security is very important to them and why you have to have the cheaper things. And that's just a part of how the experience is. But to always be in that place of thinking scarcity when there's so much abundance out there, there's so much you can learn. I think it's more about how you use your commodities, like your time and your money. Because I have a friend who's very good about budgeting stuff, and he makes like 3 or 4 times less than what I do currently. And he's able to do it and still go on these trips. He's been able to travel to Chicago, Arizona, Florida, like all these different places, even though he's making 20 something an hour a week, and he's going to college on top of that. Like, he's able to do that because he is paying attention to how to actually schedule, how to actually budget and do these things, and he's applying it. Or ways that's not always the case, because when you're flustered with family, you're like dealing with all these emotions and then your past emotions, and it can just be a lot to dissect at that time, or you're distracted by all of that. Because you have to truly look at what you're using your time on. Are you just sitting there like feeling like, oh, they need a change, and you're just bickering and telling all these people, oh, they're doing bad, and then going on Facebook and saying stuff like that too? It's just, it starts to become a cycle and a loop of like, okay, I'm using 3 to 6 hours out of my day looking at social media, complaining to people and talking to people just to complain, instead of actually using those 6 hours productively. Or they use them to watch entertainment, which I think a healthy amount of entertainment is good, but when you're trying to build past something and create something more, you have to use more of that time wisely to build into something larger. So
Yeah, I mean, it's all about like looking within. If you really want something, then you've got to go after it, and you have to use your time wisely. But it's all about how bad you want it. And sometimes people aren't in the mindset where they're like, oh, I want it, We're not always in the hopeful mindset. Sometimes, people get down and they're like, oh, I just don't think I can do it, or I just don't have the energy to do it. But it's all about picking yourself back up, because at the end of the day, the only person that's looking out for you is yourself. Mm-hmm. So you gotta make sure that you're giving whatever 100% that day is, even if it's 2% that day. As long as you're doing the best that you can that day, then
yeah, I think a way to look at it too is like that cycle. Like if you see that, okay, you're given this decision again to use your time. Like let's say you get home from work, you feel great, and you're like, okay, I could do a lot of stuff, and you have all this motivation, but then you're like, oh, but this person came out with a new video, or oh, this thing came out, and you just start spending those hours doing that, even though you should be doing that other thing. You've been given that opportunity to change that again, but then you go back into that same cycle again after you chose to do that thing again. Because as humans, and this is kind of talked about in the book a little bit, we adapt to things that are comfortable for us. Whenever we start to break out and like all these things are new, you try to find security and comfort because you want something that makes sense to you again. Or it's not all just new, because then it's like you start to kind of shift away from who you are, and you don't know how to kind of intermingle the new experience with the older experiences that you had, because you could be moving very fast paced. Like you could be doing something every single day that's something new. Like let's say you got on the new like cast for a show or something like that. So many different things are happening. You're meeting new people, you're having new lines, and you could be talking with people during your day to where you lose that sense of who you are because you haven't stepped back and actually took the time to actually think about what you're doing, because too many things are happening at once to where that's the case. Same with traveling. If you're traveling so much, which there's an individual that I know from school that actually has done that, they start to get lost in a lot of different things. And then when one large thing happens where it's like somebody tries to like take something from you, or you see this reoccurrence of like, why am I seeing dead things around me? It's like you start to question like, am I safe? Am I okay? Because all of this other stuff is changing around me, and it's like, am I good? Am I stable?
Yeah, I mean, change is scary for a lot of people, and I do agree people try to find things that are comfortable or that they're used to seeing, but you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable sometimes. And I mean, you'll fall back into a routine. It'll just be a new routine as long as it's moving you forward instead of backward.
Yeah, using your mind and your memory, things that can fade. But when you build up that muscle, as it is in the brain, there's so much more that you can access. There's so many more conversations that you can have. Because that's ultimately in conversation. If you choose not to talk in that situation, that's still a move regardless on your end. But it's like, okay, was that the one to make in that scenario? Or should I actually be communicating something to them? And if there's not the results with using any one of those things, then that's where that change has to occur. Whether, you talk to them or you talk to somebody on the side of them, or, you keep that distance away from that individual. It's just like, there is a right decision and the person does know it because they know the difference between what is right and wrong. Because at that moment of time, when they're putting all that stress, all that energy into it, you're going to get something that comes out the other side of it, whether you get a good or bad consequence to that.
I feel like there's a gray area between right and wrong, though, because right and wrong kind of almost comes down to what your perception of right and wrong is. There's not really a right or wrong. There are certain things where I think everyone can agree, oh, well, that would be wrong or that would be right. But it comes down to your perception and how you perceive it. And everybody perceives things differently. Like friendships, like if you get in a friendship argument and they're like, oh, well, this, and this happened. And the other person's like, no, this, and this happened. And it's like, both of you are right, because your perception. That's like watching a TV show, and like if me and you watched a show, and Bob the Builder was like, can you recap what happened? Me and you are both going to tell him a different thing. Not because we're watching a different show, but because of how we saw the show. And so you have to think back on perception. Everybody's different with it. So people are going to say, oh, well, this, and this happened. And they'd be right. That's why they always say, like, there's 3 sides to every story. Yours, theirs, and the truth. No one's ever going to know the truth because of bias. Even, if you go and tell your friend what happened, oh, well, this person did this, and this. They're your friend. They have a bias, so they're going to believe your side of it. Same thing with the other person. Their friend is biased. They're going to believe that side of it. So no one ever really knows the truth. They only know people's perception of the truth.
Well, I wouldn't say never, because that wouldn't be the case in a lot of different scenarios, actually. I think if you're paying attention to what's going on and you understand how to not deal with bias, like, yes, it may be in a lot of media and a lot of different people, but there is the truth that is told quite a bit. I wouldn't say it would be the majority of the time, but that's hard to gauge too because it's situation by situation basis. But I wouldn't say it's never, you never find the truth, because you would eventually understand both sides of the story, which I think is the next level of it, to tag on to that. Because right and wrong is a very basic concept for people to grasp. But then you go into the understanding portion, because eventually those two people who are bickering over something where, oh, this, and this happened, and the other friend's like this, or this happened, well, you take the time to actually understand each other. I think there's a form in the argument beforehand where both just want to be heard, but neither get heard. So there's no answer, no conclusion that they come to. It's just they think that they are right. So there is no conclusion of understanding, which is that next layer.
I disagree to disagree. I feel like there's always a bias. People have beliefs on different things, which creates our bias. And everyone's going to be different. There might be some things that, certain people agree on, but nobody's ever going to agree on everything. So I think a bias is always there. And I think understanding is not necessarily the same as, like, right and wrong. Like, yeah, you can understand somebody's, like, what they're saying. Okay, like, I understand, you believe this, and this happened, this is how you felt in the situation, but I think that people still have to take responsibility for their actions as well, which is why like if two friends were arguing, the friends are going to believe that person.
Well, again, it's about presentation though, right? Because I think the perception that you were bringing into this is like the friend is going to tell the other friend like, oh, this person did this, this, and this without actually giving them the full scope of the story. I don't think everybody operates like that. And that is definitely true, because another aspect of the never that I'm thinking about is like, if we were to say that a rock is thrown, but we both think it landed in a different spot, there's still a truth in it. The rock was thrown. They both agree on that, and that is something that they can factually do, because what were they doing? They were skipping rocks on a pond. So it was both thrown, it's just where it landed and how many skips. That starts to vary because you don't always have the recollection of that memory perfectly to the T and on both sides, but there's still inherently a truth that's happening behind it, and you're both understanding why you might come to that conclusion. I think it's just about how much you actually understand each other too, how much you're paying attention to the other person, because that can bring value as well. Because if you're trying to help them, you can't just agree with them on everything, because if you did, there's no growth for them, and there's no growth for you, because that means that they're probably doing the same thing for you. Not in all cases, but that if that's how the relationship goes, where both of you kind of almost talk about yourselves instead of actually about the situation, that's where it's not so much where that bias starts to become heavier, instead of, if you're both trying to understand, that bias starts to not be a larger factor on whatever decision is made or whatever's said.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely are. I mean, the truth of a situation is always going to be the facts. Like, what is a fact in this situation? In that one, the rock was thrown. It's a fact. You know, nobody's trying to dispute that. But then you get down to, like, the nitty-gritty details where it's like, okay, well, now what is the truth? And at that point, nobody really knows, because there's two different sides.
Unless they come to some conclusion about it. This is what happens with psychologists too whenever they're talking to their patients, because a psychologist can just tell you, oh yeah, this thing happened to you. Like, yes, you were raped at the age of 10. Like, this is a story that I've commonly heard, like going through, you know, the many different case studies that they've had for people. And that's one of them. The psychologist could do that and tell them that they're absolutely right, that they were raped at the age of 10. But that is not the case. Like, you have to let the person almost make that decision. Because if the psychologist does, you'll have that belief of, okay, they're right. And then you just follow whatever they're saying, instead of actually thinking, wait, you have your own decision to make about it as well too, because you have to shape it. Like, that person doesn't know the truth. Even through all the things that you've said, that's just speculative at that point. You could be making it all up, which has also been a case as well too. So ultimately, I think it comes down to the person deciding, okay, what actually did happen in this scenario, whether they are telling the truth or not in that scenario. It's how can they get better afterwards in understanding, okay, how do I pay attention more so I can actually uncover these issues? Because the same problems will keep coming up, not where the person just continuously gets raped, but the problem of not actually understanding the scope of it and looking into it, that's gonna like linger on and pass on to different scenarios where it just keeps getting applied, where you keep having the same answers. Like, the psychologist is right, or I'm always right, instead of just having a blend of that, because everything is a situation by situation basis. Nothing is gonna be exactly as you had planned it to be, or exactly as it's stated, because our memory is not perfect in that way. But you can always choose to understand and pay attention to transcend to the next level. I think it almost is like levels, because right and wrong is very basic, and that's how a lot of arguments are based off of too. But then you go into the aspect of, okay, let's look at it a bit deeper, have an understanding with the other individual. And then there's ultimately where you move into the truth of how that thing goes or how it will go, which is always something that's larger. I don't know if I have a word for it necessarily, but there's that next step that it goes into past understanding, where it just is, or it is a law that is like that, whether it's true to that character or not.
I just don't view, like, understanding and the truth as the same thing. Because, like, understanding is not the truth. You're just acknowledging, okay, I hear you, I understand what you're saying, but it's not necessarily the truth.
But it grows. It's a building block to the truth.
I guess, in a way. I don't know. I guess I think of understanding in that way of almost like a compromise.
That's if you make it a compromise. Because that's like you accepting like what they're saying as like the truth. Where ways that's not always the case. You can understand what they mean, and that can help you build a different puzzle piece into that. Because let's say the rock situation, somebody said it went right, the other person said that it went left. Well, it's like, okay, how do we come to that conclusion? Well, this person thought that the wind had brought it that way because of that. The person thought it was the curve that they were throwing, which what is more likely in that case? Well, how strong was the wind? Let's say 5 miles an hour. Well, it's actually more likely that they curved it then, because 5 miles an hour is not going to mess a solid object up that much throwing it at a distance. But then you have to have variable factors. What was in the environment? Maybe there was a distraction. They saw a bird, so they chip shot it a different way. Like there's many different factors, but you can't uncover that without having that conversation of understanding. Because if you're always right about it, the person's unwilling to have that conversation about it. They're like, this is how it happened. And if the other person is just like, okay, they're not going to hear me out, then they'll just shut down and they'll let the other person think that they're right. Instead of being like, well, what about this? Which brings you into a chaos. Because it's like, now it's like to understand the person, it seems like you're having to battle them to find it out. But you can, that's how the truth is found out. Like, what should be the next step with something? And unfortunately, we get to the point where wars happen because somebody thinks that they're right or has this approach of thinking, oh, this is how it should go, when it doesn't have to be that way. It's just, it's gotten to that point where it seems like nobody wants to communicate anymore and everything falls apart. Because that happens in businesses all the time too, where that one decision of them not wanting to make a change when they know that it has to happen, that will occur. So that's where I think more of like, when you're going into the understanding phase, you're moving past, okay, these people aren't communicating and these people are just thinking that they're right, and trying to understand the situation further. Because that gets you closer to the truth than you not talking about it at all.
Yeah. Have you ever sat in physics class and you're working on a problem and the problem is like, oh, your car is going 75 miles an hour and you're coming up to a red light within 50 yards. When do you need to start pressing on the brake?
Yeah, I think that's a very common problem in physics.
But have you ever thought about, why would I need to know this? Am I going to be sitting in my car going 75 miles an hour, a red light's coming up, and I'm like, oh shit, hold on. Let me grab my notebook and my pencil real quick. I need to calculate when I need to start braking.
Yeah, so typically when this happens, I unlock the car doors and take the seatbelt off because I need perfect room to get that writing hand in. And potentially, if I'm unable to get the problem calculated before I hit the car, I just bail out.
Oh, okay. So you have like a safety thing where you're like, oh, I didn't answer the problem in time.
Exactly. It's a test dummy feature. Now, it's not taught in all physics classes, but, just with my teacher and professor, we got to put our hand on this ball that made her like hair frizz up. And ever since that moment, I knew I could bail out of my car during a physics problem.
I used to think about that in physics, though. I'm like, why would I need this? Like, I'm not going to be sitting in my car pulling out a piece of paper and pencil and be like, oh, when do I need to brake? Bruh, hit the brakes. Just hit them. Okay,
there is applicability. I will have the defense on their side. If you were creating something like a plane, you need to know aerodynamics, like when you're in the sky, and how much fuel that you're using. Okay, the car problems. How they make the cars. They have to know that. Like, they have... When I say crash test dummy, I'm like literally thinking of like they run cars going 50 miles an hour to demonstrate what it would be of that impact of a decision. So that's why they have those calculated for that. Now, is it applicable? Are you driving on the road and you're like, okay, I'm like 50 feet away from them. Get the calculator. Like I'm not like that, but it is true you have to know what your stopping distance is, but you learn that instead of being like, okay, I'm going 50 miles an hour, I have this much stopping distance. You just know inherently how much you should brake. Now, each person's different, because I know people who are going like 50 with like 50 feet left in front of them and come to a straight hole, like relying on their brakes entirely. Like they're running them, and they run their car like that like crazy. But then you have the old people who are literally braking like 10 car lengths from the person just because they tap their brakes in front of them. You get best of both worlds. So if you want to be a crash dummy, you can do it.
Hannah Montana, best of both worlds.
Yeah, she'll be driving your car too.
It's a new partnership she has with the DMV.
Yeah, she will meet you there. It's kind of like when you see Shaq in the Office Depot and he's kind of staring at you from like a back wall pointing at something.
Wait,
This
what?
is true. So like Shaq is also a part of Papa John's now. I think he's like part owner of it. And he's a part of Office Depot though, where they have like cardboard cutouts of him. And I just always see him where he's like in the corner all menacingly like pointing at something, because that's where they chose to place him at. So, you know, you're looking for...
I thought you were talking about actual Shaq.
No.
I'm like, why
It is...
every time you go into Office Depot, you see that man.
Well, Hannah Montana is pulling up at your car all the time to tell you, hey, you need to be driving like this. So, hey, he could be doing that. But he's busy making pizzas at Papa John's and selling out stuff. So that's what Shaq's busy doing. You'll see him cooking one day, or getting some of that pizza dough flung up in the air for you.
I don't want him to fling my pizza dough up in the air.
Why is that? Is he too tall?
What does it have to do with him flinging my pizza in the air?
You might be scared that your pizza might get stuck to the ceiling.
That's what I was actually thinking about. You remember that Drake and Josh episode where they started throwing them on the ceiling?
Yes. There was another one. Oh no, I'm thinking of Dashi. He's a YouTuber where he's like messing with this pizza dough and he's flinging it around. He flings it and it sticks to the roof.
Well, I guess y'all aren't getting pizza today.
And it was his little cooking thing. It was basically like skits of cooking, but that's what I also think of too. But yes, wasn't it sushi?
It was sushi,
yeah.
yeah.
I was like, they were on that conveyor belt line and they were like, oh, we got to get it done. And they were eating it as well too, and then falling on the line. You ever have that experience?
Actually, literally every day.
Oh, okay. Yes, she does not work at a pharmacy, as you learned in the last episode. She's actually a sushi chef manager on one of those like conveyor belt lines.
Have you seen those people that go to those like sushi restaurants and they have like a conveyor belt where you can like grab food off?
I've been there.
And they put their phone in the conveyor belt and it just is going by all these people and they're like, what the heck?
They should be playing something when it happens. Like, I don't know, Shrek AI, baby, just like the intro. Just have it going. And it goes into the kitchen too.
I know, and sometimes people's phones get taken because they're like, you can't do that.
Yeah, and they throw them directly in the trash once they see them.
It's still recording.
They're like, how did the sushi grow out of itself?
Wait, imagine somebody's on live and they just see the kitchen staff throw the phone in the trash. They're like, hey man, we're still here.
And the camera is pointing directly at them. Oh, this again. And then they toss it in the trash.
This is actually a personal experience he had when he went to one of those places. He put his phone up there with the Shrek AI music playing and they got really upset.
Yeah.
They're actually not Shrek fans.
Yeah, they're Doug Dimmadome fans. If you don't know him, he'll be featuring on the next podcast. We actually have him here. He's like where the tree is. We have his own chair. It's like a cardboard cutout of him. We'll put Shaq in the same chair as well too.
Doug Dimmadome and Shaq. Next podcast episode. Stay tuned.
1v1 as well too. Not in boxing.
Turning into a WWE match?
No, it's actually turning into a pizza dough flipping contest.
How many pizza doughs can you flip at one time?
I think Doug Dimmadone's gonna get that because he can sell so many cars.
Have you ever been able to juggle?
Not like in the manner that homeless people do.
What?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of homeless people be able to juggle on the side of the street.
Are you speaking to them or?
No, what I'm doing is I'm actually like opening my window and like showing my ass cheeks to them. No.
They're like all juggle for you.
Yeah, they juggle faster actually. No, I've just seen them. There's been like 3 of them on like different corners, and it's not the same person where they're juggling. No, it's not all the time. It's not like I see them every day. It's like, hey, Phil, and then he juggles faster, and he just smiles at me.
I was gonna say, are you just like driving and you go by a street, you see a homeless man juggling, and then you turn onto another street and you see him again? You're like, how the hell did he end up over here?
Well, it's possible, especially if I'm driving down similar streets.
No, I mean,
on different street corners.
Yeah, you're driving and you see him juggling. You turn the corner and then you see him again juggling.
Oh, in my dreams, yes.
You're like, that's how I know it's a dream.
Either that or it's possible. You'll probably see him like on a very similar day doing that same thing. So you'll think it's like a deja vu moment. You're like, wasn't he just here yesterday? But it's a different street corner and he's wearing the same shirt. I can definitely see that happening. That kind of plays with me sometimes because I'll be in like an area where I'm driving and I'm like, haven't I been here before? I'll have like those deja vu moments. And sometimes I'll be able to actually recall, I'm like, wait a minute, this actually did happen. And then other times I'm like, wait a minute, I can see like 4 steps into the future. Well, Dimitri.
What the heck? I've never seen a homeless person juggle. I've seen a homeless person playing guitar.
Yeah, I have too. You're probably seeing the same guy. There's this like local artist. He always stands on the corner of like that major intersection as well too, where the Sprouts is.
The HEB.
Oh, you're saying over here then?
No, not over here. Like, you know where, oh man, I don't want to give our location up.
Okay, we live inside of a Wagga bag.
No, but it's the HEB and then there's a Cinemark on the other side. That intersection that they remade.
Not coming to mind. I would be great by street names, but that would just give so much.
I know. I used to drive that way coming home from work when we lived in that other apartment.
Okay.
That really like busy intersection that they like remade where it's like these people go and then these people are going.
Oh.
There's a guy playing guitar over there.
I could see that. Also, I've noticed that like the bougie areas, like for instance, the Randalls and Lakeway. That's not really where. Well, they already know we're in like Central Texas. But if you want my social security number, please follow me on Snapchat. Now, it's like half of the population is like, hey, bro, what you got?
No, you're just like randomly sending people messages.
It's just random people's phone numbers. I'm like, I got Trisha Pages.
Trisha Pages or Trisha Paytas?
Oh, there is a person named that. I was just throwing out a random name.
She's an actual person.
Okay, well, I have her number, so hit me up, Snapchat. I also have her social.
She has a podcast. Maybe she can
send her social.
No.
Why not? I mean, that's all more the better.
Why are you trying to get people's socials?
Well, it's to socialize. We're trying to get communication.
That's what that's for.
It's your social ID number is what I'm talking about. Not your social security number. Your social ID number.
What's the
I'm
difference?
really trying to get their social security.
I was like, what's the difference?
It's like that's cut out of the entire podcast, and I come back in and I'm just smiling at the camera.
This reminds me of that Omegle guy that we were talking about in the last podcast.
You had brought up Omegle, and I think somebody else did. I was like, damn, is it on a trend or something? Because that's like 2 references that have happened within a day. And it was totally unrelated. Like, I wasn't even talking about the situation that you had brought up about Omegle. They brought one up about it. I was like, is it on the rise again? And that's when I signed up for Omegle and bought everybody's subscription. I don't even think, is that a thing?
You don't have to subscribe to Omegle. It's free.
No, but like, is there like a pay type of deal with it? Like, what is Omegle?
You just chat with strangers. That's all Omegle
Oh,
is.
gosh. So it's like a modern day version of an ice cream truck. Not a good idea.
Oh man, I miss ice cream trucks. You remember You remember, like, the SpongeBob popsicles that we would never get because our parents are like, we're not paying money for that.
It's also kind of disgusting. Their bubble gum that they put in them, questionable.
I'm not saying it's not questionable.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying I miss them when SpongeBob looked like he was crying. When
Or he was just melted, or like half of his face was lopsided, so he was looking at you like, what is going on?
You're like, he doesn't look like the picture.
And then you start crying, even though you're like, I don't know, middle age. Why is my SpongeBob not
Are
like
ice cream trucks even a thing anymore?
Yes, I've heard them plenty of times, especially when I lived.
Because you're an ice cream truck driver.
Caught me red-handed.
I caught you SpongeBob-handed. You see the melted SpongeBob on you.
Sound like a dying baby goat.
I was gonna say that sounded like SpongeBob if he was dying.
Yeah, I do remember those popsicles. I do like the push pop ones that Scooby-Doo had. Those were pretty
I
good.
don't think they make push pops anymore.
Yes, they do. They still have the ice cream trucks. These are still a real thing. They'll go to Zilker Park, and there's guys that have push carts as well too.
I don't want a push cart. I want a push pop.
Okay, or you can push them over for a push pop. But you didn't hear that from me.
You're like, that's the trick. Just push him over, and I'll give you a free push pop.
Yeah, he's down. Yeah, he's cool. He's a part of the clan.
He is down. He just got pushed.
Well, and then you throw him the $5
Like high five.
foot long. That is.
$5 foot long.
I don't think they've brought it back to that in a while. They might. I think they had gotten bought out recently, actually. I forgot. I want to say by like the Jack in the Box industry, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that.
Isn't like Subway's original owner like did some horrible things?
Okay, I don't know if he was the spokesperson. He wasn't the original owner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, everybody knows him. Jared Boggle or Goggle, however you want to say his last name. Yeah, that man, something else. That's actually what hurt their reputation. Somebody bought it. It's a major like food company. I gotta look that one up. I know it's a major food company.
Subway, eat fresh. Didn't Papa John's, their spokesperson or owner or something, had some horrible things too?
Papa John's?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he had sexual assault cases. What?
That's what Shaq bought it.
Well, no, I think they brought a newer, like, again, spokesperson, but Shaq also has money. He just made that investment because he likes Papa John's. But yeah, there was actually 2 reasons why Papa John's was out. One of them was the sexual assault cases, and then one of them is because they considered him a right-wing extremist. I was like, what? And I know there's information on this as well, too. What is this? Was acquired by Rorik Capital for $9.6 billion in August 2023. They're the ones who own Arby's, which I don't know how they bought them, but Buffalo Wild Wings and Sonic.
That's why, because Buffalo Wild Wings and Sonic are actually making them money. Arby's isn't.
Arby's is dishing out some of the goods. Okay, and the other one was
Papa John's.
Why did Mr. Papa John's lose what?
It sounded like a ring.
His pizza brand. It's such a weird way of asking it, but I know it will understand what I mean. Racially insensitive remarks. Oh yeah, I forgot about this one. This was another one that had happened. There was like 3 different things that it's like related to.
It sounds like he's not a good person.
That could be it. Wait, what is this? Stop respond. This is brand new. Oh, because this is Bing. That's why. According to a source, Papa John's has been struggling to stay open due to... Okay, what? Finger pointing and anti-Obamacare acute accusations? That was one... Back in 2012, there was a PR nightmare that dropped the apostrophe. What?
So it's Papa John?
No, it's still Papa John's, but why would they want to take out the apostrophe? What in the world? Papacinos.com has one of the sources. What? By 1993, yep. They're giving me unraveling the mystery. No. Step-by-step breakdown, understanding what exactly happened to him. The smoldering in Ember. It all began incassiously enough during a conference call back in July 2018. Oh, why did they not put it in here? Oh, here's another one. The firestorm caused by these comments led to several high-profile organizations, such as the NFL, removing endorsements from Papa John's. False Dawn or Redemptive Arc. So it was the word he had said the racial comments. That's what had gotten him. There's a lot of other stuff. Jesus, it's so long with all of this stuff. Conclusion.
He's not a good person.
Yeah, I've heard him actually. There's a podcast I listened to that he went on, and that's where I kind of learned a lot about him as well too. I wonder what the remarks were again, because I had forgotten what they were and what the context of it was. But that's actually how most people look at it as well too, is that they don't think he's a good person. I just don't know the full story behind it. I don't know if it was necessarily something that he had meant, but I would have to look more into it, because I heard him talk on a podcast and he seems very coherent. He doesn't seem like what I would consider like a narcissistic liar or such a bad person from all of that. But I know everybody can put on some sort of facade, but he seemed very conscious minded even when he was on there. And I think this is like after all, definitely after all those incidences, because I think I listened to this like a year, I would say about a year ago. That's when he was on that podcast. So I don't know what he's doing now.
Not working for Papa John's.
Yeah, well, not being the spokesperson for them. I wonder if he'll come back. Probably not as a spokesperson. It's kind of hard whenever you get something like that on you. Like, Jared ain't coming back anytime soon.
No.
I wonder where he would be working, though. Probably like a Family Dollar in a small town.
Hopefully people don't know him, or else they'd be like...
Yeah, they'll just be like, yeah, I've been a rancher here for... in my generations for the past 20 years, but I want to work at Family Dollar because I want to provide back to my community with some of the most cheap food that you can eat. That's me, Jared Bogle. I've given him so many different names. I think
I'm like, what is his name? I don't even know.
It's
now.
his last name. The first part's easy. But yeah, controversy can definitely bring a lot of those individuals down. And that's all about the perception of how the media perceives it too, because they ain't going to give you the truth. They're going to give you their bias, depending on the news source. That's why there's actually a list that we learned in college when I was in English, of all places too, because of like false information or misinformation. They were kind of going over like which news stations are more credible than others. But then at that point, I'm like, okay, isn't that going to be kind of biased as well too, with the understanding of that? But I think it is based off of what has been actually the case. It's just hard because it's like, who is the person that wrote it? Who is the person that funds it? And like, how does the operation work? Because that's what I don't like about like clinical trials is they'll appoint people to look over it to make sure everything goes right, but it's their own people. So it's like, okay, all of it could be funded in a manner to show somebody certain results for something, even though those results are only for a small portion of the population. It's not long term. It's not like where other people are overlooking that venture that's not associated or getting paid off by them. That's what ends up being the issue, because that's not shown it's in documents, but to find those documents, you're having to go through loops just to get information for it, because they hide that information from public consumption. They want it to be privately oriented, so it just stays in there. And of course they just don't talk about it, or if they do, it's with the group of individuals who do know about it. They display this a lot in movies actually, where it's like that group of friends who choose not to tell that friend about the thing, and then they play some like prank on it, and they're like, I don't know what you did. It's almost like a bullying tactic, but on a higher level, because they're doing it to the public.
I mean, that's why they make those big long contracts with big words that people don't understand. So they're like, I'm not going to bother to read that. And
I also think about like autocorrect on the phone as well too, where they dumb you down to not be able to like spell words like that either, because you start to abbreviate all of these things and you remember the abbreviations like LMFAO. Like these abbreviations start to come up and it's like, okay, what does the phrase mean? You go down the generations, they don't know. They just know that like what the reaction is like for. And that's language at its core too, is you're looking at like what the reaction to that word is. Like when you're a baby or a kid, you're like, when you don't know the language entirely, you're kind of imitating what they're doing. And you're seeing what the reaction is to it. So like if the baby falls and hit their leg, they look up to you to see what your reaction is. And if you're like, oh my God, are you okay? They can sense that fear within you, so they react that way. Yeah, that's usually what happens, especially during the bailing out of the car situation too. Whenever they're doing their physics. Yeah, babies do physics.
Baby physics.
Baby physics. And we're not talking about launching babies either. Although that is something that they do in physics as well too, where they'll throw that into the problem every now and again.
A baby being launched?
Yeah, if they're being launched into like their mother's or father's hands at this projectile, it's kind of like pig toss. Yeah.
Why are you relating a child being tossed to pig toss?
Do you know what pig toss is?
Tossing pigs?
Okay, no, it's a game. It was a game on Cool Math where like you could choose to be like the little cowboy, and you had to get him up the hill, and you had to launch him off of like almost a slingshot. No, it's because it's usually a pig, but you can choose different things to launch. Usually it's animals, which I don't know why that game designed it like that. Maybe the pig toss thing, but
Angry Birds is launching.
yeah, but those aren't real. Those aren't real birds, and neither is he.
You just murdered him. Nibble Nation is going after you. You gotta pay rent now.
He would probably make his little sound as well too. Oh yeah, that's actually a great placement for him right there.
He's just looking at the camera.
Yeah.
He's watching y'all.
Yeah, beware.
Don't say bad things about Nibble Nation. He will come after you.
Yeah, he's usually that person that's poking that wooden stick at your window at night. So just be prepared, because he doesn't knock. He enters.
Isn't that him knocking though?
No, that's him giving the information that he's about to burn down your house. He at least gives you that.
He's like, do you know Morse code?
Yeah, it's not save our ship, is sink your ship. Yeah, Bibble don't play.
Bibble plays, but not when it comes to fire.
Yeah.
He destroys.
Yeah, that's why you gotta cool them down with a nice refreshing, we just have an advertisement for it, nice refreshing Bibble juice. Actually, we could probably make a drink out of that. We can make, I mean, considering that he's the highlight of every show. What if it's just like, we're talking, but we get replaced by Bibble faces?
I feel like we would get sued by Barbie or something.
By her herself?
By Barbie herself.
Okay, well, the cruise ship's coming to hit the house.
Well, I just mean because they own Bibble and the rights to Bibble.
Yeah, but anybody can use it toward a thing. Of course, there's like credibility things and what you can use for it. But like, for instance, they already make money off of this. So like references to it.
I was talking about the Bibble juice.
Oh, Bibble juice. Well, we can spell it a bit different and then have a different looking version of him. You can, I mean, there's loop around. I mean, that's what they did in the food industry. I think about that all the time. Like, why we have all the processed foods in America is because they tried to make money. So all they do is just add something that's different, have a different mixture, and it's like, okay, it's yours. It's kind of like how patents work as well, too. You can make a patent as long as something is different about it. This has happened in dentistry whenever they were doing the fluoride type of thing. Or even Coke as well too, how they would have bottling was something that was separate, although it was a part of the same thing. As long as you're contracted with them and it gets some sort of approval, you can get away with some of this stuff as long as it's tinkered a little bit differently. It has to operate a little bit differently, and it's like, okay, it's yours then. That's where I think a lot of the destruction that'll happen with a lot of the houses burning down in Bibble, because they let him on the rampage, even though they saw in the movies that, you know, he was already a maniac. Like, he was shooting off shots in the Midwest since 1945. Like, he was in World War II.
You guys can clearly tell that he's actually never seen the movie that Bibble's in.
Who?
The audience can tell.
Oh, because
if they've seen it.
Well, because they've never learned about the war in history.
They go back in their history books and then Bibble's just photoshopped in there.
Or he just appears and then he comes knocking on your classroom door to give you a speech about how World War II was. He's a veteran.
We have a veteran here. He's coming to speak to us about the war.
They even have it on his wing as he's a veteran driver as well too, and he wears Boone's beret. Boone's beret is from Fallout. For all you Fallout people out there, very good game. Definitely should check it out.
They need to release the next one already. It's taking forever.
Well, the thing is, they're doing Elder Scrolls first, and then they're coming back to Fallout. Well, that's like GTA's series as well too. Rockstar was working on GTA 6, even though they have other projects that they're working on. There's another game that's very popular under Rockstar that I can't. Oh, Red Dead Redemption. That's another one.
Need to hire more people then.
No, it's not so much that. It's more of like technology and how long it takes to make those games. Because I'm thinking, I've been into this type of editing. It's super expansive. It's not something that you can do within a day or within a week or within a month, even if you had like 60 plus people on the crew, because it's so much like animated work. There are certain video programs that I don't know that they use when it comes to that. I actually know an individual, the people that I ate dinner with for 6 hours, they did the characters section for like Black Ops 2 and some of the other like shooting games. And that's what they do for a living. Now, I don't know what their pace is with it, but I could probably get information of like why it takes so long with all of that. And I know some of them slack because when you're in the office, like I deliver to offices all the time. So I see like what they're doing. And I'll see like financial sheets as well too. Of course, like I'm not really paying attention to like, oh, write that down, write that down. It's more of like I just am passing by it and you get like some information from it. I'm not like over there like secret agent spy where I'm wearing like a black mask coming in broad daylight. I'm like, I got your groceries.
Barry the platypus walks by.
And then I just take one of their computers nonchalantly. I'm like, I can have this. Nobody's in this area. And then I go to one of their cubbies and I just start working on something.
Agent P.
Yeah, Agent Bibble.
He's an agent now.
Yeah,
Dang.
we'll give him a platypus tail.
He already has wings. He doesn't need a tail.
But he needs to be able to swim in the water. That's what a true agent would be able to do. Fly, swim, shoot. He's a sharpshooter. Red Dead Redemption 3, Bibble starring on the front cover.
He's actually the main character.
Yeah.
He's who you play.
You can mod that. So there's a game called Gary's Mod on the computer where you can like take all these games and like actually reshape them. You can almost create your own setting in that, which is actually very cool. So
Wait, can you imagine you playing Fallout as Bibble? the death claws coming at you and you're like
and it makes Bibble noises whenever you're shooting as well too. You can definitely do on Gary's Mod. It's kind of limited, but as long as you know how to code, that would not be a problem. And that's what I mean. There's so much coding behind all of it and so many bugs that can happen. Like Fallout 76, that was something that I haven't personally played yet, but I know had a lot of bugs at the beginning before they started doing updates for it. And that's something you can't account for when you're first making it. And then you're pulling in new like footage. I think of like video editing when you're trying to add like B-rolls and it's like, oh, this file doesn't exist or this file is corrupted in some sort of manner. It's like, well, damn, well, now we have to reshoot it again. And that's something that can happen a lot, especially with gaming, because it's all that, especially if it's all animated. Like it's no real, well, actually none of it's really real life. But there's nothing in video games that really has that realistic feel unless like it's VR maybe because you're using your body to move.
Yeah, but it would still be the same thing. You just have it closer to your face.
Yeah, but the actions that you're doing, like Wii Bowling, I guess would be another one too. Like if you were doing the motion with it, then it's somewhat adding the realistic sense, but it's still going to be all animated. Don't know that one. I don't know where that was. That was like beach volleyball one day, and you were like having I was gonna say Chris Pratt singing in the back, but that man, I don't think it's just.
Pratt singing.
He appeared. Chris Pratt appeared. What are you gonna do? Send Bipple Nation immediately after him. Burn down his house.
Dang.
Now they have that on recording. They're gonna be like, yep. If his house ever burns down, this guy on this podcast with one listener. I'm just kidding. We don't have one listener. But this podcast, this
Trying
one
to
person
speak
said,
to you.
and I'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
What are you drinking?
Kool-Aid.
Do you remember making Kool-Aid in those jugs?
I do. There was some good flavors. There was like that mystery flavor that they had that was really good. I don't know what it necessarily pertained to. I want to say it was like a strawberry kiwi, but it wasn't that. Yeah. Mystery. The seahorse from SpongeBob.
Mystery is not the name.
Yes, it is. What is it then? Yeah, you don't know. It is mystery. Don't let the audience be fooled.
I was gonna say misery, but I'm thinking about the Maroon 5 song. I'm stuck in misery.
There's a character in that. It's Adam Levine.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
Yeah. Okay, that will probably be it for the podcast. We are at an hour and 6, I believe. So thank you all for tuning in today. Hope it was informational for y'all. Don't allow Chris Pratt to come through your window. Don't allow Bible Nation to tell you their war stories. And make sure you got your curtains closed. And if you do hear tapping, beware Bible Nation might be attacking. But yeah, share, subscribe, like the video. Keep sending out the podcast. We got a lot of new stuff coming this year. So yeah, be ready. And that's all. So
Be ready or be square.
yeah. Adios.
No quieren hacerme un 4 porque los malos lucha con el 1, el 3 soy yo.
4 letras trae el mando, Jalisco cuidando y en Guanajuato el donde ando yo. Ya pasaron las blindadas, dice un camarada, no es gobierno, va arriba el señor.